We have all experienced moments of envy and jealousy. It can be easy to look at someone else's life and recognize things that they have that we don't, and this can hurt, actually making us feel less than others or that life has been unfair.
Today, we explore the painful emotion of jealousy and how it can consume energy and emotion in a way that interferes with our own happiness and even our ability to function. Where does it come from? And how can we shift this painful emotion into a place of greater peace and well-being? Please join us as we talk about this today.
Do you sometimes feel lost in your relationships, your identity, or even your spirituality? Welcome to Gilmore&green, where healing and hope meet.
We are marriage and family therapists and relationship experts who care deeply about helping you grow, strengthen your relationships, and deepen your sense of meaning and spirituality.
We long to share from our clinical experience, years of training and solid research, including ideas about how to strengthen the things that matter the most to all of us in life.
We're so glad you're here. Our hope is to share simple, meaningful ideas that support you in your healing and in your growth. Welcome to Gilmore&green, where healing and hope meet. Hi, I'm Dr. Debbie Gilmore, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm passionate about relationships and well-being.
I'm Cheryl&green, also a marriage and family therapist, and I'm really excited today to talk about the complex emotion of jealousy. You know, Debbie, the things that I've learned in therapy have helped me understand this emotion in such different ways, which is why I'm really excited to talk about this. There's different roots to it than I've ever understood in my life. So we hope today that we can increase your understanding about jealousy, why it emerges, and the barriers jealousy creates to connection, peace, and contentment. We also hope we can offer ideas on how to shift jealousy into a place of deeper well-being and content. We're just so glad you're here. But as we begin this conversation, it's important to understand the difference between envy and jealousy. This is one of the things that's been instructive to me. Envy is wanting what someone else has, right? Their success, their relationships, and their opportunities. But jealousy is something much more deep. It's signaling pain actually around belonging, worth, and love. This comes right into our attachment understanding, doesn't it? And why it's such a threat to those things. It's the fear of never experiencing these things or perhaps losing them if we have them. And it's why it's so threatening to our nervous systems. It represents this really tremendous feeling of fear and scarcity that can consume our energy and our emotion in a way that can interfere deeply with happiness and even our ability to function. I'll just say, you know, I have the privilege of meeting with some clients who really struggle with this emotion, and it breaks my heart to see the way it consumes their life, their happiness. And so again, I'm just really excited to dive into this emotion and this topic and talk about it with you today, Debbie.
Yes, it's painful. It's a painful, confusing emotion that actually feeds and fuels shame. So again, that's why I'm glad that we're covering this topic today. Jealousy can be so easy to misunderstand. It often gets labeled as petty or shallow, but clinically, it's actually something much deeper, signaling pain around, like you said, the sense of belonging, of self-worth, and even self-love. And it doesn't show up as vulnerability. It's not that soft and tender. It tends to show up as protection from the criticism of others or resentment toward people who seem to have what we want or are able to do what we want to do. It can cause us to withdraw from relationships, to use controlling behaviors, and scan constantly for signs that will be rejected. So it's a very distracting feeling that keeps us from being our best self and finding greater well-being. So it's our brain trying to protect us from the fear of being rejected or not chosen, or I like to say, not feeling claimed by someone that matters. So there are three types of jealousy. It's really helpful to break it down into these categories. There's relationship jealousy, which is the fear that someone important to us may choose someone else. That's quite familiar to most humans. There's social jealousy, feeling like others belong or connect in ways we never seem to be able to, or we tell ourselves we never will. Or identity jealousy. That's the painful belief that others are more valued, more successful, or more worthy than we are. Each of these types of jealousy tap into the same attachment fear. Am I truly chosen? Now, what is the root of jealousy? That's where we always start. We say, okay, it is here. What has driven this? Where was it born? At its core, jealousy is a threat signal to our attachment security and our needs. It often carries painful messages about our place in someone else's heart. For example, there isn't enough love for me. Someone else is getting what I will never get. I am less valued or less chosen. I am replaceable. Boy, those are painful thoughts. It's an interesting mix of both grief and fear, isn't it?
Yeah, and I go back to what we said in the beginning. It comes off as kind of being petty, or as we get into this, you really understand why it is such a painful emotion. It does just go to the root of, our entire attachment world. So I'd like to, if with you, Debbie, conceptualize jealousy, right? And maybe break it down into these just three of these unmet attachment needs that may not being met. And the first one that we know, again, is so important in the attachment science is the need for longing. We have a longing for closeness. We have a longing for belonging. We have a longing for specialness and a longing to feel chosen. And so that need can be threatened and causes this emotion of jealousy. The second attachment need that we want to talk about is comparison. We see others that have this connection with closeness, belonging. That's such an attachment word, right? Specialness and being chosen. And when that happens, our nervous system moves into comparison mode, right? And the brain starts to ask things, why do they have these things that I don't? Why are those things available to them and not to me? Why them and not me? And why am I the one who doesn't have these things too? And so these are the kinds of things in the attachment system that we all have that start to activate the circuitry that signals that there's an attachment threat. It's just so much deeper, this emotion, isn't it, than I actually understood most of my life.
Yeah, and I want to normalize it because there's this thing that all humans are given. We all have different levels of it, but this ability to discern, whether it's discerning right from wrong, good or bad, we're always comparing. It's what our brain naturally does. So we can slowly slip into this level of jealousy and comparison without realizing it. And like I said, it's a blessing and a curse. So that's why we really want to normalize it so there's not people out there with shame identifying, I feel jealous. But let's go again to the third thing, shame. When we engage in comparisons, it can activate shame. I am bad, and the internal message that emerges in us. And we sense that something must be wrong with me. I am less lovable. I am fundamentally not enough or broken, really. Some describe these feelings as a knife to the heart. And isn't that a compelling, relatable feeling? They say that it's as if it's a knife to the heart because the pain isn't really about the other person. It's about us. Yeah. Isn't it ironic that connection can activate jealousy rather than soothing it? Let's think about that for a minute. This actually happens because closeness and connection with others increases the exposure of our comparison triggers. I hope that made sense what I said. Here's some examples of how connection can make jealousy worse. When we get close to someone, we may believe things like, I am certain they like the other friends better than me, or they probably wish they were with someone else. Maybe eventually they will choose someone better than me. So our nervous system, our brain, does something that makes a lot of sense. It protects itself by avoiding closeness, but it also reinforces the core fear that I will always be alone or I will never be enough.
Debbie, what you've just talked about has been such an interesting concept to me, again, as I worked with clients, we always believe that connection is the antidote for so many things. I guess I've just become more aware how difficult connection is when your attachment system is under threat. I've come to understand that that becomes a very painful place for people for all the reasons that you just talked about. It's, I hope, made me a better therapist to understand this a little better as I help people work through this complicated emotion. So in our work in emotionally focused therapy, we spend a lot of time understanding and looking at negative cycles too. And that's definitely part of how we can help when someone's suffering with this emotion. So if I were to map out, or we were to map out what this negative cycle might look like in us, right? In all of us, it might look something like this. There's a trigger, right? We always talk about the trigger in a cycle. We may see others who are able to connect in ways that we can't succeed or even belong. And so that then produces this primary pain of loneliness and longing and exclusion. The secondary emotion that follows this primary pain then is this jealousy, this emotion of jealousy. And we start to make meaning out of this. We start to make meaning and say things to ourselves like, well, I must be less valuable. I'm not as special, or I'm not as worthy as others. And then our protective responses step in. And those look like resentment, criticism, avoidance, or withdrawal from others, with the really sad outcome then of being even more isolated and the core belief being even more reinforced that I don't belong, I'm not enough, and I'm not lovable. And so you can see how that cycle just repeats itself again and again, reinforcing the very thing that's contributing to the threat to an attachment system. It's also helpful to understand that the pain of jealousy, because it's about belonging and social acceptance, connection, it activates the same neural systems that, yeah, social rejection does in deep attachment distress. There's an actual pain to that. And again, why jealousy is sometimes described as a knife to the heart.
This is such an interesting phenomenon. As I was listening to you talk about that panic, maybe even that pain inside of us, worrying about rejection, it's basically this big question: is there room for everyone? Is there room for me? We see it in little children as they're just trying to gain this level of security. When that new little baby shows up in the family, the sibling just above that one feels threatened. Wait, is there room for me too? Jealous of mom's attention. It's just so interesting. So, we've been talking about the roots of jealousy and the common developmental roots. Often we can trace chronic and intense feelings of jealousy back to some of our early experiences, just as I talked about these little new babies that come into the family and then suddenly there's unrest in the other children. Let's just talk about inconsistent caregiving that made love feel unpredictable or conditional, even sibling comparison that felt like another child was favored. There's a favorite child and a less favorite child, or emotional neglect, where our need for attention and attunement may not have been met when it was in the greatest need, or chronic exclusion from peer rejection or bullying. That is so painful and tragic, and unfortunately happens more than we imagine. And attachment betrayal, someone important in our life is choosing someone else. So we see that jealousy naturally will rise up. Any or all of these experiences can create the belief system that love is scarce and can be easily lost.
Love you explaining that, Debbie, because people are just doing their best to survive some of these things, right? And the natural outcome is this emotion. So, as we move forward in this podcast, we want to talk about a healing shift now. With a better understanding of what jealousy really is, then how can we shift this to a place of more healing and care in our lives? In each of us, we all deal with this. It doesn't help to shame this emotion or to eliminate it. We do that a lot. We feel shame that we feel jealous and we try to eliminate it. We find, and when we work with people, that it's most helpful to understand that jealousy almost always is just a vulnerable longing that says, I want to matter, I want to belong, I want to be chosen, I want to feel special to someone. And when we can bring that compassion to that longing, something begins to soften in us. And jealousy stops becoming the enemy. And we actually start to see it as a really important signal pointing us towards the deeper attachment needs in our lives. I love looking at it this way, this shift.
And to not reject the emotion, but instead to say, where is this coming from? This is normal, it's painful, but when we understand the root of it and these universal needs, I want to belong. We may think it's about another person, but that is rarely the case. It's usually about the story our brain is telling us about our own worth. It can be easy to think that confidence is the opposite of jealousy, but that's not true. Many people who are very competent and confident, successful, and even attractive still struggle with deep jealousy. Why? Well, because jealousy isn't primarily about self worth, it's about attachment security. Those are two very different things. It lives in our brain, wanting to know if it's safe to be chosen. If our brain doesn't feel secure in that answer, jealousy will show up, even in people who look very confident on the outside. Or, like, for example, please reassure me that I matter, or please reassure me that I'm chosen. And there's nothing wrong with asking for that reassurance. It's a signal, not a flaw.
Yeah, so healing jealousy doesn't happen by eliminating comparison, which is often what we think we want to do. We try to do that. It actually happens best when we can learn to trust that love isn't scarce and that we are truly chosen. But so, how do we do this, Debbie? How do we start to believe that we are truly chosen and valued? We're not minimizing the difficulty of this. This is hard stuff for all of us, but it really happens through logic alone. You can't kind of talk your way through this. It happens best through repeated experiences of safety, connection, and compassion. In our work, Debbie, we know this so well, don't we? You can't just logic through these things. It has to be built in us experientially, as you like to say, through these repeated experiences of safety, connection, and compassion. So we're hoping to suggest some ways that that could be carefully, slowly built in you. One of the ways is to begin noticing the story that your mind is telling you, right? Is this an old wound speaking through a current moment? These stories, as we talked about, they were often formed long ago in painful experiences that feel true, even when the evidence today doesn't support that old story. So to ask yourself, is this a current reality or an old fear speaking? And what other explanations might exist to the story I'm telling myself? Second of all, we can name the deeper longing underneath. Instead of attacking ourselves or others, which we often do when this emotion comes up, we can recognize that jealousy, again, is pointing us toward our need for belonging and reassurance.
Yeah. So the first thing you mentioned was notice it, notice the story. And we say a story because that's what we tell ourselves, and it's an assumption of truth, but not necessarily. And so another thing that we can do, and I mentioned this earlier, ask for reassurance rather than test for it. The most confident person is the one that feels a sting of jealousy, but then can say, can you reassure me? Are we okay? When we feel insecure, we tend to test love instead of asking for it. And testing looks like withdrawing from our loved ones, or criticism of others, or jealous accusations, and emotional distancing, when what we really need is clear reassurance. We can ask for this by saying, I'm feeling a little insecure today and could use some reassurance. It helps to hear that I matter to you. Can you remind me that I'm important to you? Of course, this feels vulnerable and risky, but it's how secure bonds are built. And notice the word reassurance. We get assurance, and then sometimes we need it to be repeated. So also recognize the evidence. Jealousy constantly scans for evidence of rejection, but a helpful practice is to intentionally notice the opposite as well. Who is reaching out to me? Who includes me? Who shows care and loyalty to me? Who is making time for me? These repeated reminders of belonging can rewire our jealousy, but also notice that we often rely on assumptions and assign those facts when they're really just assumptions.
Yeah, I love that. It's so easy to focus on what might not be happening and completely not see what is happening. So I love those questions. Yeah, looking around, who is including me? Who do I belong to? Who's showing me care and loyalty? Those are such great questions to ask. Debbie, we know that secure attachments grow best through multiple meaningful connections. The more we can integrate with friends and family, community, faith communities, mentors that help us belong and exist in many places. It's just more places to create this bond that we're talking about that really is the root of jealousy. A final suggestion as we make this shift into more healing for all of us is to offer compassion to the younger part of us that may have been wounded long before adulthood. Again, this is maybe one of the things you and I see in our office the most are these wounds from childhood. And of course, they hurt because a part of us learned long ago that love can be lost, but we can feel compassion for our younger self, not shame or criticism, but compassion when this happens. So I love the suggestion of just offering compassion to that younger part inside of us that may have been wounded before our adulthood.
Yeah, in my work, I think that's one of the most fulfilling things to do is to identify that younger self and to help our clients connect to that younger self and say, it makes sense that you're in pain, but I'm here for you. I'm here to offer you that reassurance and to integrate that into our whole self. So thank you for pointing that one out, Sherilyn, to identify that younger self and acknowledge that they're in pain and offer them the strength that we might have today. So the goal isn't really to eliminate jealousy entirely. That's not possible, really. As humans, we do feel that periodically. But we hope that today we've provided at least some insight that jealousy is about attachment pain rather than a flaw in you or that you're broken or selfish. We hope we've offered suggestions that will move you into a greater sense of well-being when jealousy shows up in your world.
Yeah, we're to the part where we get to talk about what are we going to take away from this? Are therefore what, Debbie? As I said in the beginning, this has been such a instructive emotion for me to understand in better ways. I haven't understood it well most of my life. I am actually so grateful for more understanding about where this comes from and what it is, not only in my life, but in the lives of others around me, and especially in the lives of clients who come in pain, feeling like they don't belong. Anyway, so I think I'm walking away feeling more grateful today to just have a better understanding of what this really is. I have thought it's been just kind of petty and an annoying bad habit or something. I did not understand the significance, the depth of it in each of us. So I'm feeling a lot of gratitude to understand it better. And my therefore what is then to take that understanding and hopefully make a difference in my life and in the lives in my circle of influence.
Oh, that's beautiful. I think what we've done today is we've taken a value that many humans hold dear, and that is to refrain from coveting what others have. And instead, looking at jealousy as a normal human experience and to normalize that and to acknowledge, oh, it's there. And then to say, what's driving it? Where am I needing some reassurance? And if I notice it in someone else, to somehow be able to convey the message there's room for all of us. We all have a place and value in this world. If we can look at it that way, it makes us more compassionate human beings and better able to offer ourselves compassion. So thank you so much for listening to us today. We hope you'll continue to follow us.
Thanks for being here, everyone. Take care.